so we can come back to the table, or if we can go to Mr. Robin. Again, we're keeping the comments brief, so we have 4 more comments, and then we have a comment from the students. It would be nice to hear from the students as well. Please use the mic, Mr. Robin. We do have some...
Since I've been in the Lions Mall for 42 years, I might as well support the idea being espoused by Jason. I think, first of all, in Dominica, we need to segment our production. We should have one set of production for manufacturing, and we should have another set of products that we produce to sell to the service industry. I know roughly 10 years ago, I was buying cinnamon, for example, at $7 a pound. Do you know what's the cost of a pound of cinnamon in Dominica right now?
No.
It's $35. If you're lucky to get it for 20. Right? You're lucky to get it for 30, you're lucky. All right? A pound of sea moss, for example, right now in Dominica is sold at $80 to $90 a pound. And although we are training our farmers, and we are giving them all the seedlings, all the incentives, so to speak, to produce, to sell for the local market and the export market, you cannot convince a farmer to sell you a pound of sea moss, for example, at $60, when in fact you can import it for $10. Now, so I think there is a need for, I'm hearing a lot of talk, but I think the manufacturers and the government, we need to talk more. We need to set up arrangements that are workable, that are effective, because there is a major divide between the talk and the action. So we need to bridge that divide, because I think we can bring to bear faster economic transformation and wider economic transformation, a greater impact on our GDP if we can come together and we can talk more. And for example, even like they were talking about Josephine Gabriel, we really need to pay attention to what is working and how can we strengthen what is working so that we can have a more effective community. And we have to relate it to what is happening in the other member state of the OECS and CARICOM. Our measures should not be different from theirs. Our measures should complement what they are doing. But the measures we are taking here should complement our manufacturers. And some of them you may not understand, but once we start to speak, we can get into more details. But we are willing to work with the government and help the government to solve the problem we think we have. They are not problems.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Robin. I see that we had 2 comments at this table, but we're just going to take the table just adjacent. So from Ms. Williams from DHTA, as well, we have a student from academics who has a question, and then we come back to this table to close with the panel.
Hi, thank you so much for this opportunity. I just wanted to comment on the idea of readiness. Somebody mentioned, I think it was Mr. Hillier mentioned, are we ready for the influx of visitors that's going to come in, or the change opportunities that's going to happen once the international airport opens? And that's very, very important for us to address, because he's absolutely right. Suddenly everybody will be able to come in and see the opportunities that Dominica has, and we have to make sure we invest locally in our local residents so we can take advantage of those opportunities. So one area that's essential is access to capital. And I am not talking 50,000, I am not talking 100,000, I am talking real investment in capital. We produce so many different varieties of soap, lotions, name it, we make it in Dominica. However, these individuals are still operating out of their kitchen because they cannot access the capital that they need to start these manufacturing plants, even if they had a ready supply of the raw materials that they needed. So it's really, really important that we do that. So one of the options could be to expand the opportunities within the CBI program. So currently the CBI is really focused on new accommodations, but within the tourism sector, extend it to include existing properties and facilities in the tourism accommodations sector, as well as to create a facility within the CBI program for all those other supporting industries. So meat production, farming, agro-processing, light manufacturing, and hospitality. That's important. The second aspect is education. So you're right, influx of visitors, we're going to have 1 million people. Well, the goal is 500,000, right? Speaking different languages. Who are we training to be interpreters to these visitors? How are we investing into that sector? And again, we go back to, with regards to education, teaching farming as a business. Right now we have agriculture, but we are not teaching it as a business. Agriculture is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And we have to make sure that we're not just teaching the mechanics of farming, we're teaching the business of farming, understanding the cost of your inputs, how to price, how to source, and so on and so forth. With regards to scholarships, I think the Honorable Minister mentioned about granting scholarships, people going away to study and then they come back and they want a job. But that's a failure on our part, because what we need to be doing is only paying for scholarships for in areas where we know we have a need. So if we know in 4 years, we're going to need 10 teachers, 2 psychologists, X number of doctors, whatever it is, that is who we fund that year. So we know when they graduate, we have an opportunity, a space for them to fill, rather than sending, 90 people to study business management, and then they come back here and we don't give them access to capital to start those businesses, and then they get frustrated and move out. So we have to make sure we create that space and the opportunities for them that we're seeing that they need to be taken advantage of. I hear a lot about export. However, we import so much food, it is unbelievable. Vegetables, for example, grows year-round. There's no vegetable season. However, because the majority of our farmers are not getting access to the capital to put up greenhouses, they have to grow based on rainfall. So all of these things are tied in, and so it's really, really important that we do that. And the other thing is, I love the idea of segmenting what we grow based on consumption. So a portion has to, whatever it is that we grow, a portion has to be targeted to manufacturing, a portion has to be targeted to the hospitality industry, and a portion has to be targeted for the retail consumption. But we have to do those numbers to see how many people we need growing, in what quantities, forward period, so we know how to meet our need. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Williams. And Sanjay from academics.
Hi, good day to all. I'm Sanjay Suku on behalf of academics. So I came to ask about, suggest and recommend three points to Mr. Hillier.
No.
Oh, I read it from top to the bottom. So Mr. Tony Edwards, right? Yeah, so I was asking, like, after you go through the processes of implementing the e-commerce in Dominica, I was wondering if you would extend the e-commerce to like outer part of the regions where they would have different demands from us, and that we can supply to those demands. You would? Okay. And for my second point was that for agriculture, where we need to encourage it all at once. So I was thinking that what I would recommend is that we do like a program where for school, specifically high school, we could implement like an agriculture program where they can do, like, let's say you will provide a field where they can plant stuff or plant produce and whatsoever. And with that, they will like, for every work they do, they can complete their work, their community hours and stuff, which is a mandatory recommendation, a mandatory thing to do at school for them to graduate. So what I was thinking, we would import a lot of seeds that we can grow here in our soil, and that we can even extend to the colleges, so that way they complete their community hours. So what they would do, they would plant, like let's say after their schedule and whatsoever, they will go to this field, they will plant and stuff, and over time, when all the crops are grown, then you can step in, take this produce, and export it as well. And in return, students will get community hours for it. Would that be a good deal? Or what you could do is make agriculture a very prevalent subject in the primary schools. Yes, we have agriculture, but for some schools, you can do it as an elective or something. So what you could do, you could implement that as well. But more of, like, yes, the theory is important, but like I said, the practice is more important as well. Lastly, I feel that what we should do is advertise our products better. When I go to supermarkets, we have a lot of local produce, but I was thinking, what if we improve our packaging and our advertising to the other countries in the world right now? That way it will appeal to their eyes, and foreign customers will be more intrigued, more interested to buy our products and stuff. So what I was thinking is that if we package better and we advertise better, we would more likely to appeal to more foreign customers will more be intrigued to buy what we have. That way we will like defeat the purpose of imports, and we will export exponentially. That's it.
Thank you so much for your tenacity and bravery, Sanjay, and the interventions that you've recommended. Before we go back to the panel, we'll just take the two last comments from this table, and we go to the panel to close because it's already 2. We have lunch. We don't want to keep you hungry. And at the same time, we do have other presentations that are way past presentation time, but I know Jose is enjoying the conversation and the interventions. So, Senator Paris.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a lovely conversation. I'm not sure if we have recognized the shift that has occurred from discussing the budget to now actually having the public-private sector conversation that I think is healthy and needs to continue going. I was excited when I heard that Honorable Pinard was going to be here. I thought we would have had the chance to engage and continue our conversation from July. But this is a different conversation, which is very healthy. A couple of things. One, both from Mr. Edwards and Honorable Pinard's introductory presentations, and I want to tie the both of them together, that a dollar spent on putting money, investing money into Dominicans' hands goes a long way. And one of the things that you said, I think in one of your responses, Minister, is when you talked about us as a people developing a culture of supporting locals. And I tie those two in together. For me, one of the things I have a problem with is that is a very, very good sentiment, but a lot of times it's not recognized in our practice, particularly from an administrative point of view. My industry is construction and engineering. And a number of the capital projects that we have in Dominica now, you see a lot of imported workforce, labor, engineering, and all of those things. Now, I understand the nitty-gritties of it, where you go, where there's a difference in the funding arrangements that you have with certain donors and et cetera, but something needs to happen, or a greater emphasis needs to be placed on employing local talent, one, but also improving local talent. There are some cases where we're not able to necessarily stipulate who should work where and how long and for how much, but improving the local talent by creating some apprenticeship programs that will allow us to upskill the people who are in the industry and who want to get into the industry, particularly in areas where we haven't seen these technologies used before. There's a lot of Chinese projects and Chinese implementation happening, some of the stuff that we haven't seen before, that I think will benefit us for generations if we learn to perfect it. And it might not be a situation where we get paid to do it, but at least I'm sure there'll be people willing to just go and learn how to do it and learn how to do it well. And that, in that case, we help to create some level of buoyancy in the skill set for local talent that we may be able to export later on, all right? And in areas where we can actually employ local talents in these capital projects. We should make every effort to do that, because that translates into some of our entrepreneurs having access to people who are benefiting from these capital projects. We now have more money circulating in the economy that we can now invest into other areas. The second thing I want to talk about is on the backdrop of the first comment that spun us into this consultation. One of the things that we have to invest more in or spend more time, and of course it's going to be a public sector, private sector partnership to do it, is investing in data. So to your question, today we have an abundance of tomatoes, mangoes, everything. Tomorrow, we don't have any. And that is inconsistency. It's not reliable. But why should they be reliable? Because the abundance that they have, how much of that went to waste? How much of the farmers couldn't recoup their investment because they didn't have the outlets, because they didn't know, or the buyer didn't know who had at the time? All right, we have a number of hotels here. What is their consumption level? Of what, for how long, and when is it most needed? Is that data we can get from anywhere? Does DAIC have that information? Yeah, but if you have that, and DAIC has that information, they can put it on to the farmers and to the suppliers. In that way, they now know, okay, for this period coming up, which is a high season for the hotels, we need to have this amount of everything, which now goes back to your extension officers and the agricultural service that says, guys, this is how you achieve that level of production for this sustained period. It has to be scientific. Yes, we have the skill set to plant and grow anything that we want, but the business aspect of it and the science aspect of it is where I think we have to make that jump. That's one. The second thing is about our standards, all right? Everybody can plant everything, but what is the standards that we're adhering to? And is it a collective agreement on the standards that we should be supplying, first, to our local market, and two, for international or regional market? What is the standards that we are adhering to? And maybe the standards exist, but do we know? Does the common man in the field, in Pishle, know that this is what you do to get the potatoes at the size that the hotels want it at, because they don't want them too big? And this is what you do to ensure, and this is the time that you pick the pumpkin to make sure that it's not too big for export. Those sorts of things, we have to make the jump in getting, one, sustainable production, and two, consistent supply at the standards that are required to make the jump. Once we start bridging those gaps, I think our agricultural production starts to shift, and we have to decide, what does the outcome look like? What does a sustainable agricultural sector in Dominica producing for local and international consumption look like? What are the targets that we'd like to hit? And if we work back from there, I think we can solve a large bit of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Parish. And final comment before we go to closing comments from the panel.
Sure. Great event. I really appreciate it. A couple of things you have to take into consideration. I was at the bank this morning, and the guy said to me, boy, the economy is so bad here and everywhere. If I had $1 million, all I would do is put it in the bank and get 2%. And when he said that to me, I swear I was going to get that $1 million. And I saw how many different things that I could do. And then I remembered I was in a class of about 25 to 30 people at St. Mary's Academy. It was the business class. The business class was actually looked down upon. And we must take these things into consideration. The science classes were the supposedly smarter individuals, and the businesses were looked down upon. If I look back at my class of 30 individuals, there are 5 entrepreneurs there. There are business people who are running businesses which are different from entrepreneurs. So there are only 5. So out of these 5 people, out of the class of 30, we are the only ones who are creating businesses. We are the only one creating jobs. What was different between them and the other ones? We have to look at the data. My father and my mother were together. That's one part I think was a major, important factor that we don't take into consideration. My father was an avid business individual. All of my other friends, I won't mention their names, were exactly the same. Mother and father, and one of them were business people. So all we knew all we heard was about business. And if you look around at the larger companies right now, you will see the exact same thing. More than likely, their parents were entrepreneurs. In 2003, I had an unfortunate event. Lost a very good friend. And it made me realize if I didn't have great parents, if I didn't have a fantastic insurance policy, I would have been in serious issues. My mother knew I didn't like to read, so she gave me a very small book. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. Brenton talked about the company called Fast Cash. That is where I got the idea from. The man who can control finances makes the most amount of money. I actually didn't even remember that until I listened to an audiobook 10 years after, and that's where I realized I got the idea from. The genesis of the book was that the king wanted to make his kingdom better, more business. So he found that one businessman who was fantastic, and he asked them to train 100 people, almost like a mentor. So the difference with some of us is that we've had that mentor with us, who is our parents, 24/7. I mean, sometimes I get fed up with my father, but it made a huge, huge difference. So that is something I think we need to take into consideration, see how we can pattern something. Either have all of the great business people here, bring in, you call them, I'm forgetting, I'm hungry. Persons under their wing so they can train them. Apprentices, in addition to the fantastic DYBT program that is there. So it's something that we have to look into and see how we can model something along those lines to produce more entrepreneurs who are going to create more jobs. More entrepreneurs who are going to create more jobs. So all of these people end up going to study. Another thing we have to change, one final piece, been brainwashed. Go to school, get good grades. Go to sixth form, state college, get good grades. Go to university, get good grades, and go get a wonderful job. That is part of the issue. We are pushing too many people to just be jobs. If you're jobs, there's no entrepreneurs. If there's no entrepreneurs, there's less jobs being created, and then we have to depend on government. One last one, let us stop putting all the blame or the requirements on other organizations. There's a lot that we can do. Even listening to you a while ago, you spoke about the what do you call it? All of the persons who have to, the language individuals, the translators.
Interpreters.
We need interpreters. We need to start doing it ourselves. We don't have to wait for some other organization. We have to start doing it ourselves. Technology, I would need to start there as I would start.
Okay, so we've had quite interesting comments and feedback from the audience. I mean, it's extensive. I can't imagine the brief that I'm going to prepare for. It's definitely not going to be a brief because it's so many recommendations which are very key. And I definitely believe that they can be interventions that can contribute to effecting change.